Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're diving into the absolute art and, frankly, the science of aquascaping with live rock. Look, if you've ever found yourself totally hypnotized staring at a breathtaking reef tank, you already know those incredibly natural-looking underwater worlds definitely don't happen by accident. So we're going to break down the exact design principles that take a setup from just a random pile of stones to a completely thriving, stable, ecological masterpiece. Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to ask yourself, are you actually building a reef or are you just piling rocks? I know it sounds super simple, right? But honestly, this is the fundamental mindset shift we need to make here. Live rock obviously brings just immense ecological value to the table, but to actually harness that potential, placing it has to be a deliberate act of design. Look, before you glue a single piece in place, you kind of have to choose your path. Now, the beginner's instinct is usually to just scatter rocks randomly all over the sandbed, kind of like you're playing a frantic game of underwater Jenga. But the professional approach, it's all about intentional frameworks. Even when you're dealing with wildly irregular rocks, you absolutely have to build the aquascape as a complete, cohesive composition right from day one. So let's move into our first core concept, moving beyond the rock pile. We really have to stop treating the tank like it's just a glass storage container for rocks. Instead, think about this as architectural composition. You want a strong focal area. And notice, the most natural-looking layouts, they don't perfectly center their heaviest rock structures. It's usually better to establish one main peak that's slightly off-center and then use your secondary forms to naturally lead the viewer's eye right toward it. Let the rest of the rockwork just gently taper off to balance it all out. Which brings us to the physical base of the tank, foundations and frameworks. I mean, you simply cannot build a towering reef on a shaky foundation. Nobody wants a catastrophic avalanche in their living room. So, to prevent that, you need three core elements: a solid rock footprint that absolutely will not shift, carefully arranged substructures, and, do not skip this, temporary supports during assembly. You need a framework that won't give way as things settle and you start tweaking the layout. There's a great saying for this: a good aquascape can evolve without collapsing. Think about it. Down the road, you're going to introduce new corals, maybe adjust your power heads, or even have to catch and rehome a territorial fish. If your foundation is basically bulletproof, you can make all those changes safely without accidentally triggering a disastrous rock slide. Okay, let's pivot to where aesthetic design directly meets biological survival, space and water flow. Now, negative space is a pretty standard artistic term, sure, but in a reef tank, it is literally a matter of survival. Leaving meaningful empty areas like open sand gaps, distinct swim-through routes, and real background depth, that's what makes a tank feel like a sweeping landscape instead of just a claustrophobic brick wall. My best advice, when in doubt, literally just take a piece of rock out, step back, and look again. Because here's the truth. Nature rarely produces solid blocks. A solid wall of stone doesn't just look super artificial, it actually suffocates a closed ecosystem. You really want to try and leave at least one meaningful void where a fish can just effortlessly glide through, or where your lighting can cast a realistic shadow. Honestly, the most striking layouts out there genuinely read better with fewer, more thoughtfully positioned rocks. And this brilliantly illustrates how every single aesthetic choice you make has a direct biological consequence. Like, gaps and voids don't just look cool by creating shadow contrast, they actually allow your pumps to push consistent water flow through the whole tank. Open pathways, they aren't just pretty swim-throughs, they keep detritus suspended so it goes into your filtration rather than settling in some toxic, stagnant corner. Loose stacks mean better oxygen exchange, so you're really designing for movement, not just looks. Let's move right along to elevation and scale. A massive mistake I see all the time is using flat elevations. Just putting all the rocks at the exact same height. It's just a bit uninspired. Instead, you want to create realistic gradients. Transition your high areas down to mid-level shelves, and then let them naturally taper off near the sand bed. This layering is basically an optical illusion. It gives your aquascape this incredible sense of scale and totally tricks the eye into thinking the tank is way larger than its actual footprint. And to really nail those realistic gradients, you've got to match the shape of the rock to its specific function. Got some flatter pieces? Awesome. Those are your absolute best friends for building out mid-level ledges. What about those really complex branching forms? You'll want to use those higher up where they can add beautiful natural texture and instantly catch the eye. Which brings us to our final phase, the art of patience. You've built the framework, and now, Now you have to hand the keys over to Mother Nature and biology. You have to resist the urge to constantly put your hands in the tank. I mean it. Fidgeting and constantly rearranging rocks just stirs up detritus and totally disrupts that early colonization of beneficial bacteria. Just give it time. With good flow and proper lighting, biofilm and coralline algae will naturally grow in and soften up those sharp artificial edges. Let the rock do the work. So the crucial point is knowing when to actually step back and call it done. Try using this quick 3-step checklist to avoid that endless tinkering. Step 1. Evaluate the whole thing from the straight-on front view. Step 2. Walk around and check it out from both front corners. And Step 3. Look at it from slightly above eye level. If your layout reads beautifully from all those different angles, congratulations, you have successfully balanced form and function. Ultimately, when you bring it all together, the stable structure, the intentional negative space, those flow-friendly gaps, you realize something really important. Good aquascaping isn't just a scramble. It is a repeatable design craft. Intentional frameworks are going to beat out random rock piles every single time, for sure. Which leaves us with one final, pretty exciting question. Once your underwater architecture is perfectly set, once that flow is dialed in and those gradients look totally natural, what kind of ecosystem are you going to invite to move in? I mean, what corals and fish are going to call your newly designed reef home? It's like a blank canvas. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this explainer. See you next time.